The night was silent over the broken city. Only the wind moved through the ruins, carrying dust and the faint smell of smoke. Eli, a human soldier, walked carefully through the old alien temple. His boots crunched over shattered glass and bones. The war had ended 3 months ago, but this place still breathed fear. He held a small light in his hand. Its beam touched stone walls covered with strange glowing marks. The light flickered as if afraid. Eli's breath formed small clouds in the cold air. He came here alone, searching for any survivors or lost data the army might have missed. He had seen enough of death. What he wanted now was something living, something that could remind him life still existed. A soft sound stopped him. It was not the wind. It was a whisper. He turned, raising his light toward the dark corner of the hall. There, behind a broken pillar, something moved. He stepped closer, slow and careful. His heart began to pound. The whisper came again, faint and trembling. "Please help!" The voice was not human. It was light, almost musical, like a song breaking apart in the air. Eli froze for a moment, unsure if it was real. Then he followed the sound. His boots echoed softly as he crossed the cracked floor. The light revealed a small figure curled against the wall. It was a woman. Or something close to it. Her skin glowed faintly under layers of dirt and torn cloth. Silver lines ran across her arms and neck like rivers of light. Her hair, pale as moonlight, stuck to her wet face. Chains still hung from her wrists, old and rusted. She tried to lift her head but failed. Her voice came again, weak and shaking. "Don't come near me." Eli stopped. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. The alien woman trembled. "I'm not pure," she whispered. Her words confused him. "What do you mean?" he asked. She closed her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "They said I am mixed." He looked closer. The marks on her skin were not tattoos. They pulsed faintly, alive, as if part of her veins. He had heard rumors during the war, about experiments, about hybrids created by both sides. The army had called them mistakes. But she did not look like a mistake. She looked fragile and afraid, yet beautiful in a way that hurt to see. Eli knelt down slowly. "You're hurt," he said. "Let me help." She shook her head weakly. "You can't." When he reached for her arm, she tried to pull away, but her strength was gone. Her chains rattled softly. He touched the metal and felt how cold it was. With a few strong hits from his tool, the lock broke open. The sound of the chain falling echoed in the empty hall. For a moment, she did not move. Then she looked at her free wrist as if she could not believe it. Her lips parted slightly, and she whispered, "Why?" Eli looked at her. "Because you asked for help." It was a simple answer, but the truth behind it made her eyes fill with tears again. She covered her face and cried softly. He waited, not saying anything. The war had taught him many things, but nothing had prepared him for this, an enemy begging not to be touched, not out of hate, but out of shame. After a while, she tried to stand. Her legs failed, and she fell forward. Eli caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was light, almost weightless. Her skin felt warm, glowing faintly against his chest. She trembled in his arms. "You should not touch me," she said again. Eli ignored her words. "You'll die if you stay here," he said softly. "Come with me." Outside, the wind howled through the broken arches. The temple seemed to watch them as they left. Eli carried her through the darkness, one slow step after another. Her head rested weakly against his shoulder. Each time he looked down, he saw the strange light under her skin pulse like a heartbeat. When they reached the edge of the ruins, she whispered his name. He had never told her his name, but she said it clearly. He froze. "How do you know who I am?" She opened her eyes. "Because I dreamed of you," she said faintly. "Before the war ended." Her words made him stop walking. He looked at her, confused and shaken. She smiled weakly, then closed her eyes again. Her body went limp for a moment, but the light under her skin still glowed softly, keeping her alive. Eli looked at the ruined temple behind them. It felt like the ghosts of the war were still watching. He tightened his grip on her and whispered, "You'll be safe now." But deep inside, he was not sure. He did not know who she truly was, or what kind of power she carried inside her blood. All he knew was that something inside him had changed the moment she said, "I'm not pure." And somewhere above, the stars burned brighter, as if they too were waiting for what would happen next. The rain started before sunrise. Cold drops fell through the broken roof of the shelter, hitting the metal floor one by one. Eli sat beside the alien woman, watching her breathe. Her glow had dimmed during the night, but she was still alive. He had wrapped her in his old jacket, though it barely covered her shoulders. She opened her eyes slowly. The light in them was strange, half human, half something else. For a moment, she looked afraid. Then she saw Eli sitting there and whispered, "You stayed." He nodded. "You were hurt. I couldn't leave you." She tried to sit up, but her body was weak. Eli helped her lean against the wall. Her chains were gone now, only marks left around her wrists. "Do you remember your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Lyra." Eli repeated it softly. "Lyra." It sounded like a word from a dream. She looked around the small shelter. Broken tools, torn blankets, a flickering heater. "Is this your home?" she asked. "For now," he said. "It's what's left after the war." She nodded slowly, staring at the flame. "The war ended for humans. For my kind, it never ends." Eli frowned. "What do you mean?" Lyra's voice trembled. "They said people like me should not exist. That we are corrupted. I am not pure." Eli remembered her words from the temple. Now, hearing them again, something inside him ached. "Who told you that?" he asked. "My own people," she said quietly. "And yours." She looked at her glowing hands. The light under her skin shifted with her heartbeat. "During the war, humans captured my village. They forced our healers to test human medicine on us. But something went wrong. The medicine changed us. It changed me." Eli listened in silence. The fire crackled between them. "They said we were no longer fully Xylan," she continued. "Our blood carried human code. Our minds became unstable. Some of us died. Some turned into monsters." She touched her chest lightly. "And some lived. But we were not welcome anywhere." Eli felt anger rise in him, not toward her, but toward the people who did this. "You were a child, weren't you?" Lyra nodded. "I was 12 when the soldiers came." He clenched his jaw. "You didn't choose this." She smiled sadly. "Choice is something pure people have. The rest of us only survive." The silence that followed was heavy. The only sound was the rain outside and the soft hum of her skin. After a while, Eli spoke. "If you stay here, they will find you. The army still scans this area. They're hunting survivors." "I know," she said. "They call us contamination." He looked at her with worry. "Then you have to move. There's a cargo tunnel under the ruins. I can take you there before nightfall." She tilted her head. "Why would you help me, human?" "Because you're alive," he said simply. "And that's enough reason." For a moment, she studied his face as if searching for a lie. Then she looked away, whispering, "You're different." Eli packed what little food he had, some dried fruit, a few protein bars, and a flask of water. When he turned around, Lyra was trying to stand. Her knees shook. He reached out, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me," she said. "My skin reacts to humans. It could harm you." He smiled softly. "Then we'll keep our distance. Just stay close enough to follow me." They left the shelter and stepped into the gray morning. The sky was filled with clouds that looked like smoke. The ruins stretched for miles, broken towers and shattered bridges, reminders of both species' pride. As they walked, Lyra stopped often to rest. Her glow brightened when sunlight touched her skin, then dimmed again when she grew tired. Eli noticed how she shivered, though she never complained. Were you a soldier too? She asked quietly. No, he said. I was an engineer. I built machines that kept people alive. But they used them for killing instead. She looked at him with sad eyes. So you were like me. A tool in someone else's war. He nodded. They reached the tunnel entrance by sunset. It was dark, cold, and smelled of rust. Lyra hesitated. It feels wrong, she whispered. Eli shined his light ahead. It's safe. It leads to the lower district. We can hide there until we find transport off this planet. Before she could step forward, the ground shook. A low hum filled the air. Drones. Eli turned off the light and pulled her into the shadows. Small red beams scanned the ruins above them. The sound of engines grew louder. Lyra's breathing quickened. The glow under her skin began to pulse faster. Eli whispered, "Stay still." She pressed her glowing hand against her chest and closed her eyes. The light spread slowly across her skin, then vanished. The air grew colder. Even the drones seemed to pause for a second, as if something had blinded their sensors. Then they moved on, passing above without noticing. Eli looked at her in shock. "What did you do?" Her voice was weak. "I hid us. But it drains me." He realized she had used her own energy to protect them. He reached out instinctively but stopped himself halfway. "You saved us," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm not as impure as they said." When they entered the tunnel, the darkness swallowed them whole. Eli led the way with his small light, and behind him, the alien girl followed, her soft glow returning with every step. As they disappeared into the depths, she whispered something he could barely hear. "If I die, promise you'll remember me." He turned and looked at her. "You're not going to die." But her eyes said she didn't believe him. And deep inside, he wasn't sure either. The tunnels were colder than night itself. Metal walls stretched in both directions, echoing every sound. Eli walked first, holding his small light close. Behind him, Lyra followed quietly. Her faint glow reflected against the steel like soft moonlight. For hours they moved without speaking. The silence was heavy, filled with fear and questions neither dared to ask. Every few minutes, Eli stopped to listen. Somewhere above them, engines roared in the distance. The army was searching. Lyra's steps grew slower. Her light flickered. Eli turned. "You need to rest." She shook her head. "If we stop, they'll find us." He looked at her trembling hands and sighed. 5 minutes. No more." They sat on a broken pipe. Eli gave her water. She drank slowly, her eyes closed, her lips shaking. "Thank you," she said softly. He smiled a little. "You don't have to thank me for keeping you alive." She looked at him. "Humans don't usually help my kind." He met her gaze. "Maybe the humans you met weren't the right ones." For a moment, her eyes softened. But then she looked away. "You don't understand. If they find me, they'll kill you too. They erase anyone who helps us." Eli leaned back against the wall. "Then we'd better make sure they don't find us." Suddenly, the tunnel lights ahead flickered to life, one by one, as if someone had activated the power grid. Lyra's eyes widened. "They're tracing your signal." Eli cursed under his breath and turned off his light. "Move!" They ran through the tunnel as alarms echoed behind them. Red lights blinked on the walls. The sound of drones filled the air. Eli grabbed her hand without thinking. Her skin was warm, alive, and glowing brighter with every step. "Don't stop!" he shouted. The tunnel split into 2 paths. One went deeper underground. The other led to an old maintenance shaft. Eli pointed left. "That way!" They stumbled into a chamber filled with water pipes and broken machines. The air smelled of oil and metal. Lyra leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. "They're close. I can feel them." Eli scanned the ceiling. "There's an old ventilation route. If we climb up." Before he could finish, a drone appeared through the tunnel, its red eye glowing. Lyra's light burst from her skin in panic. The drone's scanners beeped rapidly. Eli grabbed his weapon and fired. The bullet struck the machine, sparks flying. The drone exploded, filling the tunnel with smoke. "More will come," she whispered. Eli looked at her. "Then we move now." He pulled open a maintenance hatch and climbed first. "Give me your hand." She hesitated. "If I touch you again, it could hurt you." "Then I'll take the pain," he said firmly. She looked at him for a long second, then reached out. Their hands met. The glow from her palms spread across his fingers like soft fire. It didn't burn, but it made his pulse race. He pulled her up. They crawled through the narrow passage as more drones entered below. The machines scanned the walls, but their sensors seemed to falter. Eli looked back and saw Lyra's eyes glowing faint blue. "You're hiding us again," he said quietly. She nodded weakly. "Yes, but I can't do it for long." They reached the surface vent and pushed it open. Cold air hit their faces. Outside, the forest was dark and full of mist. The ruins ended here. Beyond this line, scanners would be weaker, but the cold would kill them if they didn't find shelter soon. Eli helped her climb out. She looked around at the trees, her expression full of awe. "I haven't seen this sky since the war." He looked up too. The clouds were clearing, revealing a sea of stars. "Welcome back to the world," he said softly. She smiled faintly. Then her face turned pale. Behind them, the ground shook as armored carriers rolled into the valley. Searchlights cut through the fog. "They found us," she said, fear in her voice. Eli grabbed her hand again. "Come on." They ran into the woods. Branches snapped under their feet. The sound of drones grew louder. Lyra stumbled once, and he caught her. "I can't keep this up," she said, her voice weak. "My power, it's not meant for long use." "You'll make it," he said, holding her close. Then, suddenly, she stopped. "Wait." Her eyes glowed brighter than before. She turned to face the searchlights. The markings on her skin began to move like living fire. "What are you doing?" Eli shouted. "Buying us time," she whispered. Before he could stop her, she raised her hands. The air around her rippled. A surge of light burst forward, flooding the valley with blue energy. The drone's systems fried instantly. The searchlights died. The night turned silent again. When the glow faded, she collapsed into his arms. Her breathing was shallow. Her light dimmed almost completely. Eli lifted her gently. "You're not dying on me," he said. She smiled weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "You shouldn't care this much, human." He looked down at her. Too late for that. As he carried her deeper into the forest, rain began to fall again. The cold wind howled, but he didn't stop. Behind them, the soldiers shouted orders in the distance, searching through the wreckage their own machines had caused. Eli held her tighter. Her head rested against his chest. He could feel her heart slowing, each beat weaker than before. "We'll find a place to rest," he said softly. "I promise." She didn't answer, but a faint smile touched her lips. And far above them, lightning flashed across the clouds, the same color as her fading light. It looked as if the sky itself was mourning her. The forest was silent except for the whisper of rain. Eli carried Lyra in his arms through the mist, following a narrow path between old trees. Her skin glowed faintly, fading more with every step. He found an abandoned cabin half buried in vines and broken wood. It smelled of dust and time, but it was shelter. He laid her on a blanket near the fireplace and knelt beside her. Her breathing was soft but uneven. He touched her forehead. Her skin felt cold, almost lifeless. "Stay with me," he said quietly. Her eyes opened slowly. They shimmered faint blue in the dim light. "I'm still here," she whispered. Eli started the fire. The warmth filled the room, and shadows danced across the walls. He tore an old shirt into strips and began cleaning the wounds on her arm. Each time he touched her skin, the strange light under it pulsed in response, as if alive. She watched him for a long moment. "You're not afraid to touch me anymore?" He smiled slightly. Should I be? Her voice trembled. Yes. I could hurt you. He looked up at her. You already did, he said softly. The moment I saw you, you hurt something inside me I didn't know I had. Lyra blinked, confused, and then looked away. You don't even know what I am. He sat beside her. Then tell me. For a while, she said nothing. The sound of rain filled the silence. Finally, she reached for the edge of the cloth that covered her shoulder. Her fingers shook as she slowly pulled it aside. Underneath, her skin glowed with intricate lines, like a map of light and veins intertwined. They moved gently, alive, forming symbols that looked both human and alien. Eli stared, unable to look away. This, she whispered, is what they called impurity. She touched one of the glowing lines. My people believe that light is sacred. It flows only through the pure. But when the humans changed us, it became unstable. It mixes with your science. My body doesn't know what it is anymore. Eli leaned closer, his voice quiet. Does it hurt? She nodded. Every day. It burns when I use it. It grows when I'm afraid. That's why I can't stay near others. It reacts to feelings. He looked at her glowing veins again. It's beautiful, he said. Her eyes widened. Beautiful? Yes, he said. It's life. It's light. It's you. She turned her face away, tears glistening in her eyes. You don't understand. This light is a curse. I can kill with it. Eli shook his head. You saved me with it. The fire crackled between them. For a long moment they sat in silence. Then softly Lyra said, During the war, humans used our DNA to build soldiers. They wanted creatures that could heal fast and survive any environment. I was part of that project. I wasn't born. I was made. Eli's chest tightened. You're saying you were created in a lab? She nodded slowly. Half silent. Half human. That's why my body glows. It's trying to balance two souls that were never meant to meet. She placed her hand on her heart. I can feel both sides inside me. The human side loves. The Xylan side fears. Every moment I live, they fight. Eli reached out carefully and took her hand. Her glow brightened at his touch, filling the cabin with soft blue light. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. You don't have to fight alone, he said quietly. Her voice shook. Why do you care so much? I'm a weapon that shouldn't exist. He smiled sadly. So am I. Every soldier who survived this war is one. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Tears fell down her cheeks. She covered her face, but Eli gently pulled her hands away. Look at me, he said softly. When she did, he whispered, You're not impure. You're proof that something good can come out of everything they destroyed. She stared at him, silent and trembling. Then, without thinking, she leaned forward and rested her head against his chest. He froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her carefully. Her body was warm and fragile, but the light inside her pulsed stronger with every heartbeat. I can hear your heart, she whispered. He smiled faintly. And what does it say? She closed her eyes. It's loud. It doesn't lie. They stayed like that for a while, human and hybrid, surrounded by firelight and rain. Outside, the storm began to fade. Inside, something else began to bloom. But then the radio on Eli's belt crackled to life. Static. Then a voice. All units report. Sector 12. Human deserter spotted with a contaminated subject. Eliminate on sight. Eli froze. Lyra lifted her head. They found us again. He turned off the radio and looked at her. Then we run again. She touched his cheek gently. You don't have to keep running for me. He smiled faintly. I don't run for you. I run with you. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she smiled, not in fear, but with quiet strength. The light under her skin grew brighter, reflecting in his eyes like a promise either could break. And somewhere deep inside the forest, a new day began to rise. Morning light crept through the cracks in the cabin's roof. Eli woke to the faint hum of energy. Lyra sat by the door, her eyes closed, her skin glowing brighter than before. She was concentrating, her hands pressed together as if praying. "What are you doing?" Eli asked softly. She opened her eyes. "Listening. The forest is full of machines. I can feel them." He frowned. "Drones?" She nodded. "Too many." He moved to the window. Through the mist, he saw faint red lights moving among the trees. The army had arrived. Eli grabbed his pack. "We have to go now." Lyra stood, but her body swayed. "I used too much power last night," she said weakly. He caught her before she fell. "You'll be fine. Just stay close." They left the cabin and moved through the forest. The air smelled of smoke and metal. Birds had fled. The silence felt unnatural. Eli led the way along an old trail, guiding her through the fog. Every few minutes, scanners swept the sky, their red beams slicing through the mist. Lyra's glow dimmed to hide them, but each time she did it, her face grew paler. "Stop using your power," Eli said. "You're killing yourself." She shook her head. "If I stop, they'll see us. You'll die too." "I'll take that risk," he said firmly. She looked at him with soft eyes. "You're stubborn." He smiled faintly. "You're only noticing that now?" The moment of peace didn't last. A distant explosion rolled through the forest. The trees shivered. Lyra turned her head sharply. "They're burning the area to flush us out." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then we move faster." They reached an old bridge crossing a frozen river. The metal was half rusted, creaking under their steps. Halfway across, a light flashed from the other side, a drone. It spotted them. "Run!" Eli shouted. Bullets tore through the air. Sparks flew as they hit the bridge. Eli pulled Lyra behind a broken support beam and fired back. The drone's light swung wildly before exploding into fire. But the sound had already drawn others. The forest filled with the whine of engines. Lyra's hands trembled. "There's too many." Eli looked around desperately. "There's a cave on the other side. If we can reach it." Before he could finish, a carrier ship roared overhead. A loudspeaker crackled. "Sergeant Eli Carter. You are charged with treason. Surrender the contaminated subject immediately." Lyra's eyes filled with fear. "They know your name." He clenched his fists. "They always did." He turned to her. "Go. Run to the cave." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll cover you." "No," she said firmly. "I won't leave you." He was about to argue, but her eyes glowed bright again, brighter than he'd ever seen. The marks across her skin pulsed like living light. "Lyra, stop," he said. "You're too weak." Her voice was calm. "If they want me, I'll show them what impurity can do." Before he could stop her, she stepped into the open. Her light burst across the bridge, flooding the air with energy. The drones froze mid-flight, their circuits sparking. The river below cracked open as the energy surged through the metal. Eli shielded his eyes. "Lyra!" When the light faded, smoke filled the air. The drones were falling from the sky, one by one. Lyra stood in the middle of the bridge, shaking. Her glow flickered wildly. He ran to her and caught her before she collapsed. Her breathing was shallow. Her pulse weak. "You did it," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "I told you. I'm not weak." He held her close, his voice breaking. "You're more human than anyone I've ever known." They crossed the rest of the bridge together and entered the cave. Inside, it was dark and quiet. The sound of the forest faded away. Eli laid her down gently and covered her with his jacket. Outside, the army regrouped. He could hear distant orders echoing through the valley. They wouldn't stop. Not until both of them were gone. Lyra reached for his hand. "They'll keep coming," she whispered. "I know." Her eyes closed slowly. "When I'm gone, you have to run." He shook his head. I won't let you go. You can't stop what's inside me, she said softly. It's growing stronger. It's not meant for this world. Eli's eyes filled with tears. Then I'll find a way to save you. She smiled faintly, her voice barely a breath. You already did. You saw me as more than what I was. She lifted her glowing hand and touched his chest. Her light spread into him, soft and warm. He felt it pulse through his heart, through his blood, through every breath. What are you doing? He whispered. Sharing the light, she said. So you'll never forget me. Then her glow faded. The light vanished from her skin, leaving her pale and still. Eli held her in his arms, shaking her gently. Lyra, no. Stay with me. But she didn't answer. He pulled her close, tears running down his face. The faint warmth of her hand lingered on his chest, the gift she had left behind. Outside, the storm clouds broke. Sunlight poured through the trees, falling across the cave entrance like a blessing. And in that golden light, Eli made a silent promise. He would not run anymore. He would fight, not for war, but for her. The cave grew darker as the day faded. Eli sat beside Lyra, holding her cold hand in both of his. Her glow was almost gone now, only faint lines of light tracing across her skin like dying stars. Outside, the army's engines rumbled closer. The sound of soldiers shouting echoed through the valley. The hunt had not stopped. Eli could hear the heavy steps of mechs crushing through trees. The war had come back for them. He looked down at Lyra. We can still escape through the mountain pass, he whispered. She opened her eyes weakly. They'll find us. They always do. Her voice was soft but steady, filled with something he had not heard before, peace. Eli shook his head. No. I won't let them take you. She smiled faintly. You still don't understand what I am, do you? Before he could answer, the cave shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The roar of engines filled the air. Eli grabbed his weapon and stood at the entrance. Outside, searchlights cut through the mist. Eli Carter! A voice shouted through a megaphone. You are surrounded. Step out and surrender the subject. He didn't move. Lyra's faint voice came from behind him. If you go out there, they'll kill you. He turned to her. Then I'll die standing. She tried to rise, but her body trembled. You don't have to fight anymore. He walked back and knelt beside her. I'm not fighting for the war. I'm fighting for you. Her eyes glowed softly again. Eli, the power inside me, it's growing. I can feel it burning through my blood. If I use it again, it will kill me. He took her hand. Then we find another way. She shook her head. There is no other way. Outside, the soldiers prepared their weapons. The commander gave the order. Open fire. The cave entrance exploded. The blast threw Eli against the wall. Rocks crashed down, blocking half the exit. He coughed and looked up. Lyra stood now, her eyes glowing with blinding light. Stop! He shouted. You'll die if you use it. She looked at him and smiled, calm, beautiful, and sad. Then let me die saving someone. Her body lifted slightly from the ground, surrounded by blue light. The cave filled with energy. Eli tried to reach her, but the force pushed him back. His hands shook against the wave of heat and wind. Lyra! He cried. Her voice echoed inside his mind. Remember me, Eli. Remember that I wasn't a mistake. Then the light burst outward. Outside, the valley turned into a sea of blue fire. The shockwave spread for miles, disabling every drone, every mech, every weapon. The soldiers were thrown to the ground, blinded by the flash. And then silence. When the light faded, the cave was half gone. Smoke filled the air. Eli crawled toward where she had stood. His eyes burned, his ears rang, but he didn't stop. Lyra! He shouted again. In the center of the cave floor, he found her, lying still, her glow completely gone. He lifted her into his arms. Her body was light, her skin pale as glass. Tears fell from his eyes onto her face. You said you'd stay. he whispered. You promised. She didn't answer. But as he held her, a soft pulse touched his chest, the same warmth she had shared with him before. It spread through his heart, through his blood, until his whole body glowed faintly in the dark. Eli froze. He realized what she had done. She hadn't only destroyed the army. She had given her remaining life to him. Her final light, the last of her power, lived inside his heart. He sat there for a long time, holding her body as the sun rose outside the ruined cave. The light fell across her face, gentle and gold, as if the world itself was saying goodbye. When the soldiers finally came, they found the valley silent. Their machines were dead. Their weapons useless. And at the center of it all sat a human, holding an alien woman, glowing faintly in the dawn. He looked up at them, his voice calm but strong. Leave her in peace. No one moved. None of them dared to speak. Then, without another word, Eli stood. He carried her out of the cave, step by step, into the sunlight. He buried her beneath an old tree by the river. He placed her necklace, a small silver charm she had kept hidden, on the grave. When the wind passed through the trees, the leaves shimmered faint blue. It looked like her light had become part of the world. Eli knelt there for a long time. I couldn't save you, he whispered. But you saved me. He closed his eyes, and the warmth inside his chest pulsed again, a heartbeat that wasn't his alone. And from that moment on, he knew. She wasn't gone. She lived in him, in the light she left behind, in every breath, in every sunrise that painted the sky her color. Years passed. The war between humans and Xylans became a story told in history books. The world rebuilt itself, slowly and painfully. Cities rose again. Forests grew where battlefields once burned. But some wounds were too deep to see. Eli Carter lived far from the capital, on the edge of a quiet valley. His hair had turned gray, his hands scarred, but his eyes still carried a faint blue glow, the same soft light that once lived within Lyra. Every night, when the stars appeared, he sat on his porch and looked toward the river, where a single silver tree grew. No one else knew why that tree glowed. But Eli knew. He had planted it the day he buried her. Sometimes travelers came to visit him. Soldiers. Scientists. Even children who had never seen war. They asked him questions about the Light Woman, the alien who ended the last battle and vanished in blue fire. Eli always told them the same thing. She wasn't a weapon. She was hope. He never spoke of her death, only of her heart, how she saved lives, how she believed in peace when everyone else believed in purity and power. People began calling the glowing tree Lyra's light. At night, it shimmered softly across the valley, guiding lost travelers home. One day, a young girl from the academy came to see him. She was human, but her eyes glowed faintly blue. Sir, she said, holding a data pad. Is it true you fought beside one of them? Eli smiled gently. I didn't fight beside her. I followed her. The girl hesitated. They say hybrids were destroyed after the war. That no one like her survived. Eli looked at the sky. That's what they said about light after darkness, too. The girl frowned. Then how are your eyes like that? He touched his chest. Because she gave me a part of herself. A light that doesn't die. The girl nodded slowly. My parents said I was born different. The doctors don't know why. But when I come near this tree, it feels warm. Like it's calling me. Eli's heart skipped. What's your name, child? Lyra, she said softly. The sound of her name filled him with stillness. It wasn't just coincidence. He looked at her glowing eyes, the same gentle blue he once saw in the cave. He realized then that Lyra's legacy wasn't buried beneath the tree. It was alive, breathing through generations, carried in the blood of children who would never know what it meant to be pure or impure. He stood slowly, walking to the silver tree. The air around it shimmered. He placed his hand on the bark. It was warm. She's part of the world now, he said softly. Part of all of us. The girl stood beside him, her small hand touching his. Can you tell me her story? He smiled. I've told it many times. But I'll tell it once more. He began to speak, his voice quiet, his tone filled with memory. He spoke of the ruins, the whisper in the dark, the girl who said she was not pure. He told her about the bridge, the chase, the light that burned away fear. He told her how that light became love. And how love became salvation. The girl listened without blinking, her eyes glowing brighter with every word. When he finished, she whispered, "Did she love you?" Eli smiled sadly. "Yes. In her own way. Enough to give everything." The wind blew gently through the valley. The leaves of the silver tree shimmered like stars. Eli closed his eyes. For a moment, he could almost hear her voice again, soft, calm, full of warmth. "You're not alone, Eli." He opened his eyes. The girl had stepped closer to the tree, her hands glowing faintly. The light spread through the branches, brighter than before. He watched in silence as the glow reached the river, turning the water blue. The girl looked back at him. "She's still here, isn't she?" He nodded. "She never left." Years later, when Eli's time finally came, people found him sitting under that same tree, smiling peacefully with the faint blue light still glowing in his eyes. Beside him was his journal, filled with his handwriting. On the last page, one line was written. "She said she was not pure. But she was the purest soul I ever knew." After his passing, the world changed again. Humans and Xylans began working together. Science and faith no longer stood apart. A new symbol appeared on every peace banner, a human hand holding a glowing blue flame. They called it the Light of Lyra. And every year, on the day of the last war's end, people gathered in the valley. They lit candles beneath the silver tree. They told her story to their children, not as a legend, but as a promise. A promise that compassion was stronger than fear. That purity meant nothing without kindness. And that love could bridge even the stars. As the night fell, the valley glowed in blue light, reaching up toward the heavens. And somewhere among those stars, perhaps in another world, a faint whisper echoed through eternity. "I'm not pure." "You are," his voice answered. "You always were."